Hello and welcome to another edition of Depth of Field. My name is Eric, and joining me today is my man, the main man here, the director of Depth of Field. This is Mr. Julian Stamboulieh.
Oh!
But he's not really our guest today. He's going to be discussing with me, but our true guest, we reached deep to get some A-list talent.
Into some deep depth.
Deep depth of, I like that. It's not like it's a big secret. We kind of let the cat out of the bag last week. And we've been promoting it all week, but it's pretty exciting. We've got Jesse Eisenberg, Oscar-nominated Jesse Eisenberg, Mr. Mark Zuckerberg Jesse Eisenberg, Mr. Lex Luthor, Mr. Zombieland 2 coming out soon.
The list goes on. A titan, really.
A titan of acting, a titan of filmmaking. The voice of Rio, the bird. He's been in a shit ton of movies. And he's in a movie now called The Art of Self-Defense.
Yes.
And we both had a chance to see it. It premiered at Fantasia last week.
Which is, you know what, if I guess I didn't even know, but if I had known, I probably would have gone, I would have gone and seen it in the theater. And then my friends would message me, you should see this movie. I'm like, oh my God.
So how do we describe it? It is a dark comedy, a very dark
It's a dark comedy, and it kind of pops through genres depending throughout the film. I watched it last night, till 2 a.m.
It comes out this week, by the way. We should mention that if any of you guys want to see it, it's in theaters at the end of the week.
And I find that throughout the film it changes genres. Sometimes it's borderline horror.
Oh yeah, no, there's some gore in there. There's some real surprising. Oh shit! I can't believe they went there. But at other times, it reminded me of Karate Kid or other, even Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah, and actually, I was speaking with Liz about whether or not it was similar to Napoleon Dynamite, and I think that because a lot of the movie is really awkward. It's really awkward, really uncomfortable, and a lot of these kind of static, off-putting shots that you might see in something like Napoleon Dynamite, but I find that the difference between it, and I don't want to get because you're guiding this conversation, not me, but but is that the characters, even though it's also a very absurd movie, the characters aren't caricatures.
No, they're fully fleshed out.
Yes.
Even though sometimes they don't have a tremendous amount to say. It's not a very verbose movie. No. When people, despite the fact that he is quite the verbose person, but it's funny and then all of a sudden dark and then all of a sudden, it's always awkward and I think the casting is perfect. Yeah. We should explain a little bit about what the premise of the movie is. Basically, he plays this meek office working guy. Is he an accountant, I think?
Yeah, he's an accountant. By the way, one of the best opening scenes introducing a character ever.
That's right.
The opening scene is...
So, and he's very meek, and he's not really respected by the people at his office. I think he has to buy dog food. Yeah. And on his way to get dog food, he gets attacked by a motorcycle gang and decides he doesn't want to be living in fear anymore, so he's going to sign up for karate lessons. Yeah. And meets the most interesting of senseis at the dojo, who teaches day classes and night classes. And eventually he gets into the night class and things go off the rails. Yeah. Is that a fair description?
That's a very good description of the A plot of this film.
Right. And there's the B plots. There's some romance.
There's a couple little B plots in there, and the script of this film is such an absurd script, and it's a very, very, when I say blunt, I actually mean so blunt that it's refreshingly unique.
Yes.
The film does not hide what it's trying to say. In fact, it's so crystal clear that that's part of the comedy.
Right, and that's and that being, I think there's a lot of commentary on masculinity and what it means to be a man. At one point, his sensei tells him that he has to listen to heavy metal music all the time so he can be tough and aggressive. Yes, there's a lot of social commentary. Why don't we see the trailer? Why don't we have a look at The Art of Self-Defense, and then we'll come back, we'll talk a bit more about it, and then we'll throw to the interview with Jesse Eisenberg.
Love it.
Let's do it.
Karate's a way of communicating. Ask me a question. What are your plans for the weekend?
I'm going to do some grocery shopping and rent a film to watch in the comfort of my own home. Did that answer your question? I want you to tell me why you're here.
I'm afraid. I'm afraid of the dark. I'm afraid of other men. I want to be what intimidates me.
You came to the right place.
I'm taking my first class today.
Your new white belt?
Is that the first belt color?
White is before color. You haven't earned color yet.
Today's lesson: to kick with your fists and punch with your feet.
That makes perfect sense.
Good. There's a mental component as well. Everything should be as masculine as possible.
You may want to start on those reports. That pile is getting awfully high up.
I won't be petting you anymore. This is for your own good.
What's your favorite style of music?
Adult contemporary.
No, it should be metal. You're a blade and I'm sharpening you. I see a little of myself in you.
Is that you, Sensei? Why are you filming this?
This isn't a safe place, Casey.
I know you're confused about what's happening. You have to trust me.
You should have never started taking karate. You can't be weak anymore.
I'm interested in buying a gun. I need something that can fit into my hand.
Sounds like you're after a handgun.
I challenge you to a fight to the death in unarmed combat.
This is your belt. It is yours. It is sacred. There'll be a $15 charge to replace a lost belt.
As I'm watching this, and now I've seen the trailer, I've seen the movie, I've done the interview, I've gone back to the trailer. I really want to see the movie again. It's one of those movies that I think has the potential to become one of those cult classics.
Yeah.
As I was watching the trailer, I was even thinking a little bit of Office Space. That kind of like, there's just such a, I've had a conversation on this couch with other guests about how there's so many, movies are so run of the mill. And this is such an exceptional movie in the true sense of exceptional. It's out of the ordinary.
Yeah, and I think actually the timing is perfect considering how Endgame just finished, Game of Thrones just finished, like so many things just finished that were following the same formula all the time that, I mean, I really hope that, like, and I know they're going to talk about a little bit more marketing in the interview, but like, I really hope that this film gets the attention that it deserves in order to kind of like, to stand out right now,
And we will talk about the marketing because the fact that he volunteered to go out and market this movie is pretty amazing, and we'll tell that story after. But he was on Fallon last night. And as you guys said, stepping down from doing an interview.
Seriously.
With us. But,
the Beanduck Studios.
But yes, I mean, I'm glad to see that they're giving this a push that it deserves, because I think this is the kind of movie that the blockbusters are sucking up so much of the air that it's hard for movies like this to get any real estate.
Yeah.
And I hope it does. And upon seeing that trailer again, I was like, yeah, no, this is a great movie.
Yeah.
Shall we see the interview?
Let's do it.
I think everybody's waiting for the interview.
I think let's go for it.
I'm proud. I'm proud to throw to my interview with Jesse Eisenberg. Yeah. Jesse Eisenberg, welcome to Depth of Field.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you for coming. So we're talking today about The Art of Self-Defense. I watched this movie yesterday. It is really good. It's so hard to describe. If you were to give, when people ask you about this movie that you're in, what's the elevator pitch?
Well, it has changed. When I first read it, I thought, this is the funniest script I've ever read. The dialogue, had me in tears, good tears, tears of laughter. And I just thought, this is so brilliant. And then when we were making the movie, I thought, wow, this is really quite dark as well.
It's very dark.
And they're not shying away from like certain violent elements. They're not shying away from like some real kind of like off-putting strangeness. And then now that the movie is kind of like coming out, I realized, oh, actually, this is something else entirely. This is actually like this brilliant satire on modern ideas of masculinity.
Right.
And the reason I think of it that way now is because audiences are receiving it this way. Because we're living at a time where you're kind of perceiving all culture, you're filtering all culture through topics that are being discussed politically. Like, this movie happens to be a really great satire on the way men treat each other, the way men think of themselves as men, the way men treat women. And that's because audiences are filtering it through this lens right now.
And all we talk about these days are things like toxic masculinity,
Right.
and you have all kinds of gun control discussions. So I mean, yeah, this is a commentary on modern society.
Yes, but it was written in 2015, so it was written kind of like before these topics became so widely discussed and at such an intense level. While we were filming the movie, the stories about Harvey Weinstein came out. So you could imagine, so we're all waking up and reading these stories about a man we know, and women we know, of course, because we're in the same field as them, and then going to work and filming a movie where men are talking about the way we treat women, and it kind of gelled for me that this movie is so brilliant and prescient that it's talking about these issues that society's kind of just catching up on.
Well, it's also interesting because there's this idea of strength, and I'm a dad of a young son.
Me too.
Well, and
How old?
Just about 5. He'll be
Okay,
5
yeah.
in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yours, I think, 2.
Yeah.
So my son is really into the Hulk and loves strength, and he's like, "Is he strong?" And I'm trying to figure out how to teach him what is strong. And so in
Right.
this movie, what do you think the message about strength is?
Yeah, it's complicated because the movie is not like really didactic. The movie doesn't really, tell the audience exactly what to think. But from my experience talking to people who've seen the movie, they have a pretty clear understanding that the sensei, this kind of sociopathic cult leader, is actually not like a good version of a man.
Mm-hmm.
He listens to all the right manly music. He appreciates all the right manly dogs.
We're gonna talk
speaks the right
music.
manly language.
Yeah.
But actually, it's not being a good person in society. And yet my character finds sympathy for this woman, Imogen Poots' character, who is a brown belt who's never allowed to ascend to black belt because she's a woman. And my character feels that she actually is the best one in the class and deserves to be a black belt. And so I think the message is pretty clear, which is that a strong man is an ally for those who don't have the luxury to be strong, whether they're marginalized for whatever set of reasons somebody can be marginalized for. So to me, that's like a strong man, I guess. But it's funny because we both have a young son, and it's society, I'm looking at the way society tells him to be a man, and so many of the things I disagree with. You're going to be a big boy. I can assure that person he's not going to be a big boy. Doesn't come from big parents. So do we correct that? Is he going to feel bad when he's not the biggest boy in school? All these things that I'm sure you're thinking about too.
And when you're making these movies, it allows you to kind of explore those ideas.
Yeah.
And this being a dark comedy, I mean, I think the emphasis is on the dark.
Mm-hmm.
How do you achieve that balance? Because it's also very funny.
Yeah, I mean, the dialogue is so brilliant and so funny on the page, as written, that if it's delivered like we deliver it in this movie, which is this kind of weird flat affectation with no kind of undertone, no subtext, I think it becomes dark. And I think it's still funny because the words are so funny, so you're absorbing it as an audience as something that's funny, but the actors are not reading it like they're in a comedy, with eye rolls or anything, or kind of winks to the camera. And so it's this very strange interplay of great dialogue and odd performances that give it that kind of dark comedy feeling. And also, of course, the content is dark. And I think if the dialogue was not so brilliant, then it wouldn't work. But because it's so funny, we can kind of sacrifice some of the nudging,
Well, one thing that we discuss on Depth of Field quite often, and it came up recently, is the idea of how to market films these days, because that's a whole other approach. It might not be the way it was before. So a movie like this, which is so particular, how do you market something like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way to market this is what the company has been doing, which is going to these film festivals all around the world, and people love the movie. The movie has great reviews, but also the audience reaction is they feel this was made for me. This is all the stuff I've been thinking about, and this is my sense of humor. And I think the way to market a movie like this is to just have people see it preliminarily, at film festivals and critics, and then people will go because of that. It's kind of like a word of mouth movie rather than like a, let's say a billboard movie.
Well, one thing that I noticed is there's this infomercial that was made to basically, for the dojo.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen this on YouTube.
Yeah, it's really
that's
funny.
Brilliant marketing for me. That's a different way of approach of reaching people, and especially people online. We're on Twitch here. This is a different audience. So,
Right. In your opinion, does that lead to people going to a movie?
Oh, absolutely.
Why? What's the kind of process there, in your opinion?
Well, people are more apt to watch a funny satire of an infomercial and then get hooked in.
Right.
And that way, they're seeing that, the movie makers and the movie marketers are not seeing this as just a run-of-the-mill everyday movie, but they're taking a new approach.
Right, and kind of like building it as like, oh, this is a special world you're entering into that has like extraneous elements. And I mean, this movie genuinely does. I'm sure they do that a lot with movies that don't have those elements, but this movie genuinely has there's so many brilliant elements to this movie that could be their own movies, like whether it's a discussion of color of belts or whether it's a discussion of dogs or like you're saying music.
Right.
Yeah. Do you have a special interest in heavy metal music or something?
Well, actually, I have played in many heavy bands over the years.
Oh, you have?
But my preference, this is embarrassing, my preference is I don't want to call it adult contemporary, but I love me some yacht rock. So
Really?
I'm Michael McDonald and Phil Collins and Hall & Oates all the way, but I played in an experimental heavy noise band.
Did you do that for that reason, like to offset your...
No, but it allowed me to admit that I like the kind of soft rock stuff.
Right.
And I do love playing the heavy stuff. But
Right.
I'm interested in you. What kind of music do you listen to?
My favorite band is Ween, W-E-E-N. Do you know them?
Yes, 12 great country greats.
Yes, exactly.
One of my favorite albums of all time.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. And they actually do a parody of, they have a song called It's Gonna Be a Long Night, which is a parody of, what is that band? It's very like heavy metal, this kind of where you can't make out a lot of the words.
Well, that's it. I mean, they go in so many different directions.
Right.
I loved Chocolate and Cheese, but when I heard that country album, I was like, oh my God, this is, and they had all the best country players on that album. It's
did they really?
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And they're not, it's not like parody, it's real. Like
Yes.
it's as good as a good country album, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's what makes them really great, is that they don't kind of mock it, they actually embrace these different styles and they're so adept at finding it. So they're my favorite band, and so I guess I can't really characterize the genre because they run the gamut.
Maybe a bit like your career too.
Yeah, I guess I like different things. And Ween always has a kind of like self-awareness, like a sense of humor, and maybe that's the kind of stuff I like too. The Art of Self-Defense to me is like the ideal movie because it is I can play an emotional character, but it's not like indulgent emotionally, and it's funny. Like I have this feeling all the time, this probably just comes from my culture, which is like, you kind of always has to have an element of self-awareness and sense of humor. Yeah.
I'm from the same tribe.
I'm sure you are. Yes, I know. Yes, and so like, as you know, like you feel guilty if you're not like being funny in a situation. Like I can't have a fully serious conversation. It feels indulgent.
But do you feel the pressure to be funny?
Of course.
Always?
Yeah, of course. Yes, of course. But I mean, but I enjoy it. I mean, my favorite kind of interaction to have is making jokes with somebody. But I enjoy it. But of course, yeah, you feel the pressure, but that's just because it's fun.
Well, today's Larry David's birthday.
Oh, is it really?
All hail Larry
should
David.
We spill some Manischewitz on the floor?
That's right. But back to music, because in the movie, heavy metal and is the music that your character is supposed to listen to
be masculine.
To be masculine. Do you ever listen to heavy music to make you feel a certain way, or?
Well, the director Riley Stearns said that because no, the answer is no. No, I never listened to that kind of thing. I mean, I never knew about heavy metal music or anything. But Riley said actually it really calms him. I said, how is that possible? He said, I think I just grew up with it when I was a kid and I didn't realize that I listened to it when I was a little boy. So when I found it as an adult, I found it really relaxing. But he also does jujitsu and all this other stuff that is not part of my life.
Well, let's talk about martial arts too, because I overheard in your last interview that you said that you don't necessarily like to do martial arts because you can't talk.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But do you have martial art movie preferences? Do you have some favorite martial art movies?
God, I really didn't see that much. I think I saw Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon like in the theater.
Movie.
Yeah. I loved it, but I also to me it was like, I don't know, I couldn't really, I don't know. It's not like a genre that I really got into. I think like when I was growing up, I guess The Karate Kid had just come out, but I think I'm a little too young to have seen it or when it came out.
How old are you exactly?
I'm 35.
Okay, yeah, I was like sweet spot for Karate Kid.
Really?
That was,
When was it? Mid to late 80s?
Early 80s.
Oh, was it early 80s?
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess what happened was like I didn't realize this until recently, but I guess what happened was like the movie was so popular that for suburban Americans, maybe suburban Canadians as well, like all these like McDojos popped up. You know, like McDonald's, these karate.
Gym kata.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so like I think so I was put in one of these classes for a few weeks. I mean, I hated it because I'm not that adept with that kind of stuff, and also because I can't be funny. Yeah, I can't be funny. Like there's very little humor in martial arts. You know, it's like it's very serious. And I guess I got into it a little through this movie in terms of like watching it, but it was like I was watching Cirque du Soleil or something. Like I didn't appreciate it probably as a martial art as much as I appreciate it as just this amazing display of physical prowess. There were two people who worked on this movie, this guy Steve Terada and Mindy Kelly. Mindy coordinated all the fights, and Steve is acting in the movie, and he plays a blue belt in the movie. And they're some of the best in the world. In fact, they competed as kids, like they competed together when they were like 6 years old. And the stuff they do, I mean, you could Google these people, you know, online or whatever, and see the stuff they did. It's like watching, you know, a great basketball player or a great, you know, circus performer. It's amazing, and I loved it from that perspective. But I couldn't really get into like the martial arts of it all. I guess just because I didn't excel at it, and you know, it's one of those things that like, you know, I'm 35. If I don't immediately excel at something, I don't have the time to like, you know, put into it.
But if someone were to approach you and be, okay, we're doing Crouching Tiger 2, and we want you for the role, are you up for that kind of thing?
I assume it would be a prank call that you're discussing, but yeah, I mean, I like doing anything. Like I did a movie American Ultra where I had to like be great at it, and so I took like I spent like a lot of time, like over the course of like months, learning some of the stuff, and I got like okay at it. Like I grew up playing basketball. I'm not like uncoordinated or anything, but like it just is not like the first thing that I'm like immediately attracted to.
So you've played and will continue to play Lex Luthor. What are your favorite superhero movies?
I've actually not watched any of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know that's crazy. I just I don't know. I got like about when I started acting movies, I got like a little self-conscious about watching them because I saw like the artifice of it, so I kind of like stopped watching movies.
So you're not a movie buff per se? Okay.
No, because what I discovered is that like when I stopped like watching them, I was able to act much more comfortably because I was not like aware of like the artifice of it, like that this is fake and that this is going to be viewed by an audience. But I also just got personally less self-conscious. I can kind of like immerse myself in the role without thinking that I'm going to have to contend with it. So I actually haven't seen myself in a movie in years.
Really?
And yeah, I just find I'm like better for it. Maybe I'm not, but I feel more comfortable on sets now for it. I loved and I haven't seen the Batman movie I was in because I don't like watching myself, but I read like Chris Terrio's script. Chris Terrio wrote Batman vs Superman, and I think he's like just a genius. I mean, he is. I mean, he's a certifiable genius as well as as a friend. He's just brilliant, and I loved what he did with that movie because he was able to kind of like take these really like timeless themes and impose them onto like an exciting modern story. But otherwise, I haven't seen any of the other ones.
Well, let's talk about Marcel Marceau because you play him in a movie that's in post-production now.
That's right.
I think it's coming out.
Exactly right.
What was this being a French-speaking place, playing a French character? What was that like? He's also this is a movie about the resistance, and yet he was a mime. So that's a very interesting situation to find yourself in.
Yeah, I mean, so his roots are exactly mine. His father's from a similar area in Poland that my family's from. I don't know if yours are as well, or
Poland, Russia,
right.
Romania.
Exactly,
Ukraine.
I'm Poland, Romania, and Austria. Exactly, and exactly. So it was interesting to do this story that is about my culture, but also about an artist. I mean, these are the two things in my life. I'm very curious about my background, but I'm also obviously immersed in the arts. And so it was interesting to get to do this story, which is a World War II movie about Marcel Marceau saving 200 kids. It's a true story during the war. And using his art and developing his art to help these kids. And what's really wonderful about the movie is that it's really a story of an artist finding his art through helping others. And this is something that I think about a lot. My wife works in arts education in 150 schools in New York City, bringing arts to underprivileged kids. And so as I've gotten older and more interested in just being a good person, and especially through my wife's work, I realized how art can be so helpful to people, and that's really what the movie's about.
And it's getting comparisons to life is beautiful, I guess, in that sense, that it's a positive look at something that's really difficult.
Exactly, yeah, and I mean, it's really true. I mean, Marceau, in order to keep the kids quiet while they're hiding, like, developed this certain kind of mime. And so it's just a beautiful way, any story of people that survived the war, during that time in that area is an amazing story. And this is just another amazing story. Just happens to be with, one of the great mimes of, the best mime of all time.
And what about French culture? Because not only are you playing Marcel Marceau in that film, but in The Art of Self-Defense, your character is quite into French, all things French.
That's right. And it's told that it's told that that's a feminine culture that he should not be interested in, and instead he should focus on German and Russian. And I suppose it's like the very broad stroke American generalization of French culture, that it's contemplative and depressed and indulgent, and by contrast Germany is efficient and strong, and Russia's brutish and strong. And so that's what the movie is saying. But I'm an actor. We did the Resistance movie. We filmed it in Germany, actually, even though it takes place in Strasbourg and Lyon. So we were kind of interested in, and there was a lot of French actors. So I got interested in French culture through my French friends who are French actors, Clémence Posy and Félix Moati. I guess their movies probably do come out in Quebec more so than they would come out in the States, even, because they're in French. And so I got interested in French culture, and thinking about Marcel Marceau as a kind of French artist, and the way he thought about himself as a French artist, and the way he was able to kind of take himself very seriously in a way that I think American artists don't feel as like they have as much luxury to kind of take themselves seriously as maybe a French artist. I'm just thinking in kind of broad strokes now about culture. And so Marceau, in my interpretation of him, thinks of himself as a very serious artist who doesn't want to be pulled into kind of helping these kids initially. And so there's something, in my opinion, that feels French about that. And so I help, and the other actors in the movie kind of help me understand what aspects of French culture would apply to this story.
And what about you in your life? Are you interested in French culture? And are there things that you learned about French culture that you think that you apply to your life at this point?
I know Quebec much better than I know France. Partly proximity, because it's 5 hours from where I grew up in New York.
Well, let's talk Quebec then.
Yeah, I love Quebec. I did a movie here last year with Kim Nguyen. And I just, we fell in love with the province. My wife has come up here a lot with her family growing up, more so to Quebec than Montreal. But it's just the most interesting city on earth. It's 5 hours from New York City, but it feels like you're in Europe, but it also has the kind of politeness of Canada and the multiculturalism of a major cosmopolitan place. And so we just fell in love with it, and we come here as much as possible, which is what I'm doing now.
Really? And so you're here to market the movie, but you're also going to spend some time?
No, on the contrary. I just told the movie company, I said, I'm going to be in Montreal if there's anything you want me to do to, this is how I hold my phone, by the way. Got a foot from my face and with my fingers out. It's so weird, but this hasn't changed, even though the phones have changed.
No, exactly. Pull it off the wall and talk like that.
Right, exactly. You'd think mime would, update itself with the new technology, but no. That's Marceau for you. I told the movie company, the Canadian distributor, I'm going to be in Montreal if you have anything for me to do, because I love The Art of Self-Defense. It's my favorite movie, and it's also it's like a diamond in the rough, in that when people find it, they love it, but it's going to be a little harder to find than some big budget movies, obviously. So I said, if there's anything I could do to promote the movie, please tell me, and I'm going to be in Montreal for a few weeks.
That's amazing. I don't imagine that happens very often with actors who voluntarily say, hey, I want to do a press day.
When when actors really love movies that they've done, they do whatever they can to market it. But also, I'm meeting somebody like you. It's interesting. What could be better? Talking about a thing I like with a nice person.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
Let me ask you one last thing, because I think we have to wrap it up. But this movie, you're so passionate about it. You love it so much. Blockbusters really take up so much of the air these days in movies. How do you think it's going to do, and what are you going to try and do to kind of give it, besides doing things like this, how can this movie get to as many people as possible?
I think this movie is fortunate in that it's great. I know that sounds so glib, but when people find something these days, they have a lot greater ability to tell other people about it. So I think that's what's happening with this movie already. I'm not on Twitter or Facebook or anything like this, but Riley is, the director is, and he tells me God, I sound like such a old Luddite right now, but he tells me that people like it on Twitter. I don't know, but people like the movie, so they'll find it. Yes, as much as like blockbusters are like taking up the space, like it's also a lot easier to find something like this than it would have been like when I was a kid. Like this would have been my favorite movie when I was 14 years old, but I would have had no access. I grew up in the suburbs of New Jersey to see something like this.
And now people have access through the web, through those YouTube commercials that hook in people who wouldn't otherwise see it.
That's right, and I would have taken a bus into New York City to watch this. This would have been like my favorite thing to do, but I would have had no knowledge of it, 20 years ago.
I have so much more. We'll just have to talk another time.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was really nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Hey, that was, are we back on? We are back on. I was so into the interview, I didn't even realize it was ending. I'm like, oh, hey, that's me on the screen and Jesse Eisenberg.
Can we get a round of applause in the chat for the fabulous interview?
Oh, yeah, I'll give it up too for the fabulous chats and for, I mean, look, the interviewee is, they make it easy. If they're difficult, then it can be really harrowing.
I can't wait for my episode. Right. I'm gonna make you work, man.
But he was generous.
I'm not answering that.
He was exactly what you expect him to be. Like, I don't think there's any, I don't think he puts on any airs. I think he is as neurotic as his characters are. I think he is as transparent about, as self-aware as his characters are.
Right.
And it was really a pleasure to meet him. And the thing that, as we were watching this, I was like, oh, I like this part, I like that part. I love the fact that we talked about music and that he was curious about my music. And, the thing that really blew my mind is that I've worked on the marketing for several films, and it is famously hard to get an actor to want to do any press.
Right.
And this guy, I was sure that he was in town to do press, and he's like, no, I like to come to Montreal, and I so believe in this movie.
I think literally like the whole room's jaw dropped.
Yes.
Jaws dropped.
You never hear that.
That's crazy. Yeah, man, I had to blackmail the LARPs cast to actually go, you know what I mean?
That's right.
I still have those pictures of Scott, anyway.
And he doesn't like to talk about himself. He doesn't watch himself in movies. I thought that was fascinating too. And as someone pointed out in the chat, same with Bruce Willis.
Apparently Bruce Willis hasn't watched one of his films since the 80s.
Wow. What about you? Do you watch stuff that you're in?
So, yeah, I mean, yes. Even my dubbing stuff, for some reason, it's not that I think I'm especially comedy, it's not that I think I'm like a top tier actor or whatever, but for some reason I crack myself up. Really? I can watch my own performances and I can laugh my ass off more than anyone else that's watching it. It's probably not a good sign, but.
How are you, we're going off topic. I will bring it back, but how are you when you're like, the weirdest feeling for me is if I'm playing a video of something I've made or a song that that we've recorded, and I want people to listen to it. I'm so uncomfortable when someone is in the room with me experiencing something that I've created, and I want and if they start talking to me while it's playing, I'm like, no, just listen, listen.
Yeah.
Are you at ease in those situations?
I think that if it's something that's old and embarrassing, I have no problem with that. If it's something that I'm really, really proud of, like I love watching LARPs, I love watching Cage, I like watching a lot of the stuff that we've worked on. But if there's something that I don't feel like I could have done the best on, whether it was like maybe I was distracted at something at the time, or like something was happening in my life that I felt like distracted me from the quality of the product, then I get really self-conscious about it and really nervous about sharing it. But if I'm happy with it and I knew I did the best I can with what I had, I love showing stuff.
You know what, it's funny, I'm not too much of a perfectionist, but I can always recognize, like under the surface, I can always recognize like, oh, I wish I hadn't made that face, or I wish I had asked this differently. But to be honest, I watched that interview and I'm pretty happy with it. If only someone had told me to fix my collar.
I was the other camera. It's not my fault. I was filming Jesse.
But besides that, I'm very happy with how that interview went. I hope we do more people like that.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
And we're going to promote the shit out of this. And all of you guys should too. If you want to see us have more guests like that, do us a favor.
Yep.
Promote this, and then we're also going to put it out on YouTube.
Yep.
And so once it's on YouTube, we want to get as many views. Let's make this motherfucker go viral.
My man.
And Jesse will never see it because he's not on social media.
It's true.
Yeah.
Well, we'll put it on a VHS and put it through his mailbox.
You know what speaking of Luddites, what I really wanted to ask him, by the way, at the end, and we just didn't have time, and I'm remiss that I didn't ask him this, is that for someone who is famously not on social media and not on Facebook, how does he feel? You know, he played Mark Zuckerberg at a point in Facebook's history where it was probably, you know, I don't know, it was probably, if Facebook has been around for 15 years, it was probably 7 years in. It's probably like, you know, the halfway mark of, how does he feel about that movie, his performance, and Facebook in general now?
Yeah, it's true, because that was before, like, it was controversial because, at the time, Facebook was controversial because of what it was and what it was doing to youth and what it was doing to whatever, but it wasn't controversial for its political reasons. Now,
No, exactly.
you know, it hasn't gone through that thing. So,
And so now that Zuckerberg is like a different kind of a political figure, you know, like it or not, he is. So I would be so curious. And in fact, I heard on the radio today, if anybody lives in Canada, or even actually not in Canada, Q, you know, the show Q, he's going to be on Q tomorrow. Again, a step down, but and apparently he's going to be talking about his thoughts on Facebook. So I'm going to tune into Q tomorrow.
Nice.
At one point in the interview,
you said, sorry, I thought you were talking about Mark Zuckerberg was going to be on Q.
No. Jesse Eisenberg is going to be talking about his
more sense.
Views on Facebook.
Yeah, thank you.
At one point in that interview, we were talking about marketing and how hard it is to market a movie like this. And we made allusions to this infomercial that I had gotten via email from the film company, but it wasn't sent to me by the distribution company. It was just like the Sensei Dojo or something like that. And there was just, you know, click on this video if you're interested in karate. And so it was so untraditional in the sense of how to market a movie. And I think we should watch it.
We should.
You know, Jesse and I talked about it, and you and I have some thoughts on it. So let's give a little preview of this. This is the way this movie is marketing itself, and I say kudos. You might say differently.
Let's watch and discuss.
Let's have a look and see.
Since opening 5 years ago, countless men and one brown belt woman have had their lives transformed at the dojo of karate expert and teacher Sensei. Now, for the first time ever, Sensei reveals his method to conquer weakness and achieve masculine perfection through karate with a deluxe set of 11 motivational cassettes, The Art of Self-Defense. Learn how to achieve more in life through the power of karate. Strike fear and intimidation in the throat. Kick with your fists and punch with your feet. Master your finances and achieve peak physical performance. With ancient knowledge once held by the Grand Master and imparted to Sensei before his untimely death, he now shares this sacred knowledge with you for the low price of $49.99. Deliver the first punch in changing your life. Gain the secrets to success shared by sports stars, Top Gun pilots, executives, politicians, best-selling authors, and other unique famous persons. Over 12 hours of inspirational audio with titles including Test of Testosterone, Taking the Mask Off Masculinity, Soft Rock, Music for the Weak, Why Own a Dog When You Can Tame a Wolf, Be the Break Room Alpha, Socks and Sandals, An Ancient Tradition. Pardon my French, I'll speak German instead. Expand your mind with Sensei's aggressive wisdom.
The only moves worth learning are the ones that work. If a bear's forest catches on fire, the bear is still a bear. You're a blade, and I'm sharpening you.
Thanks to Sensei, I'm not just a blue belt at the dojo. I'm a blue belt at the office, church, most social functions, and on a downtown dating scene. Yeah!
Sensei helped me dress like a real man, and real men wear only denim, camo, flannel, and leather. I opted for all leather.
The biggest part of succeeding in life is recognizing your flaws. And Sensei says, my greatest flaw is that I will never be a man.
Order now and receive this special bonus gift. Sensei's favorite metal tracks for peak performance, with songs by Medieval Hearse, Fermented Bile, Cesspool Elegy, Behemoth of Pain, and many more. And that's not all. The first 100 orders will receive a limited edition VHS copy of the Best of Faces of Fists. Watch Sensei's curated picks from his long-running and beloved underground video series. Call now and get Sensei's entire Art of Self-Defense system for the low price of $49.99 plus shipping and handling. Call 1-855-Y-KARATE. That's 1-855-952-7283.
Why karate? I should be doing the voice for infomercials.
You should. Let's dub it.
Okay,
dub it over.
So I think this, as I mentioned in the interview, it's a marketing coup because it is setting itself apart. And as he mentioned, it's creating the world outside of the film.
Yeah.
So there's tendrils that are going out into all these different directions. Some of the lines are really funny in there, and I just find that it's a great way to reach the kids, because the kids aren't, a 30-second trailer on TV, which always has the same guy voicing it, and Jesse Eisenberg learns karate. It's not going to get people into the theaters, but something like this might.
And like old, like retro style videos that have that old kind of that absurdist sense of humor has become really popular.
Yeah.
I feel like it kind of started, the movie Kung Fury.
Oh, I love Kung Fury.
Like I feel like it's a Kung Fury kind of that launched all of this kind of 90s and 80s humor.
Well, do you know that? By the way, I'm such a sucker for that stuff, and that's why I think, by the way, Thor Ragnarok was such a success, and we'll talk about Thor soon.
It's tapping into like nostalgia, which is like huge right now.
And what I love to listen to music-wise, in addition to the Hall & Oates and the Phil Collins, is synthwave. Like I love 80s
synthwave.
It's so fucking cool.
Yeah, I can clean my apartment to synthwave.
There you go.
Usually in my underwear.
We'll dedicate an entire episode to synthwave. We have a comment from the Emerald 97. I like this way of marketing. Even as a kid, I thought those were fun, especially if a website or phone number were real.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Like world building and like. So that's the thing is that like there's world building for advertising and then there's world building for like enriching people's experience. I find this works better as an enrichment rather than an advertisement. Right. A lot of the way that like Lost did with a lot of kind of like its peripheral content. It had websites. It had all this stuff.
Right. Exactly.
And it kind of just reshapes the way that you experience the film. Or like I think this piece here. Which I think we both agreed was just a little bit long.
It was too long.
Yeah. I find that it would work well actually as a opening scene to the film. Can you imagine if that was the first scene in the film?
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Or something.
Although we love the opening.
I love the opening.
Yeah, exactly.
The opening scene. Or as something to experience after the film, because a lot of the things in that are references to the film.
Right.
And wouldn't you probably I bet you a lot of the jokes kind of like.
I think I respectfully disagree because when you do discover it after seeing the movie, then it's like it's the to me it's like that feeling when you're listening to a song and there's a sample and you're trying, where's that sample from? Where's that? And when you finally figure out where it's from, there's a satisfaction.
Right.
And I think there's a satisfaction in seeing that after you see the movie and understanding where all those things. And besides, we're talking about it, so it certainly did its job in getting people to see the movie in a different way. You also mentioned that we were talking about the writing was a little bit clunky. It hit you over the head a little bit too much.
In which in the film?
In the infomercial.
Oh, the infomercial. Yeah, I think so. Oh, sorry.
Or as the Emerald 97 says, it's like an in-joke.
Yeah.
But the thing is, there are. First of all, I loved the Simpsons style quick like the band names or the references to sandals as an ancient some of the screen the writing on the screen that goes by really quick.
Yeah, I just find that it's not that I don't like that humor as much as that it's weird to me because that humor is not necessarily representative of the humor that's in the film.
Yes, and that's what you said while we were watching it. Yeah,
is partly because one, like Kung Fury, like whatever, that infomercial draws part of its humor from its nostalgia, from poking fun at how things used to be done. But there's none of that in this film. This film is set in the 90s, but other than the fact that it's a McDojo, there's no comedy in the fact that it's a period piece.
No, that's
You know
true.
what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
And in the film, the dialogue is a lot of the times very straightforward and blunt.
So blunt that it's almost like it's surprisingly
absurd.
blunt.
Like people literally being like, we should jump down and do push-ups because it's like the manly thing to do.
Right.
You know, everyone's like, let's do push-ups, and they get, you know. So, but delivered with not like he said in the interview, with a complete straight face.
Yeah.
So the characters are really believable. It's the dialogue that's absurd. That is in that trailer piece is not present.
And so, okay, let's go back to
particular.
you as a director.
Yeah.
Watch and more about the movie than the actual. And by the way, I do a side note. Emerald 97 asking about where I got this awesome shirt. I have a story about this shirt. I'm very excited that you asked that, the Emerald 97. So we'll get to that.
Okay.
But you as a director, what was particular about this movie? We both really enjoyed this movie. We both urge people to go and see it. How do you think they achieved the feeling? It's such a strange. It's not. It's dark. It's funny. It's absurd. Actually, as I'm listing off those things, I was like, yeah, it kind of sounds like what we do in the shadows, and you know that'll take us back to Taika Waititi. But how does one achieve that? It's such a delicate balancing act. Is it in the casting or the way it's filmed? Is it cinematography?
It's I guess it's I mean, one. Yes, like cinemagraphically, it is definitely it's very dark. It's very like there's a lot of film grain and stuff in it, and so they do use things that kind of like set the same tone throughout. So the music, even in certain moments of levity, there's kind of like this eerie music that's playing, but not overtly eerie. It's only if you like kind of really focus on the music, like oh yeah. But I don't know. I think they just really define the characters well.
And it's a small movie, you know. As you were discussing, you know, I was thinking, who's the one? Oh God, is it Terrence Malick? Is that the director who did movie with the dinosaurs and the space? Terrence.
Dinosaurs in space?
You've never anyone? Yeah, Tree of Life. Yeah. Terrence Malick. So this is the opposite of the Tree of Life. This is a very small personal film.
100%. That's actually a perfect, because it's so small, and there's so few films like that get seen anymore, because they don't bring back the money that the big budget movies do, you know, so they don't get the same amount of advertising. They can spend more time on making sure that everything is consistent to their message, make fewer mistakes. There's no, you know, like it's. Yeah.
And casting, and get someone like Jesse Eisenberg who is so excited about the movie that he's willing to go to these lengths to promote it because he believes in it.
Yeah, I think that, like, you know, if you saw in the trailer, there's some of the, and the peripheral characters are all memorable.
Oh, the sensei.
The sensei is great. The gun salesman is great.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly.
The really nice blue belt that he befriends when he first walks in is great.
Imogen Poots? Is that her name?
Imogen Poots is great. Like,
but the sensei is like, you know, funny enough, that infomercial doesn't show Jesse Eisenberg. He's not in a frame of that.
Yeah.
And so you would think that they, you know, when they're marketing this movie, they want people to know that Jesse. No, but it's all about the sensei, and he is just as absurd as everyone else. He's like, he's like the sensei from Karate Kid, the bad guy sensei. Mixed with the guy from Napoleon Dynamite, mixed with, you know, people that I've met that I can't quite place my finger on, and then, you know, there's what actually happens in the movie and what he represents. It's Emerald 97 says his attitude towards the movie reminds me of how much the LARP's cast loves the show. Oh, yeah,
it's true. That's true.
So
I pay them to do that, though.
So I need to answer that question because I feel we made a decision that this isn't the show where you're my guest. We're going to do another show where you come on and we talk stuff.
So we won't divulge. We won't. Whatever. We won't talk about that stuff.
So to this shirt, I'm actually pretty excited about it because I bought it on the Saint Laurent street sale. So Saint Laurent is the main north-south artery of Montreal. It's actually called the Main, and it separates East Montreal and West Montreal, English and French. There's so many different cultures on the
It's
street.
like knife fights along that street, East and West going at it.
What is this, West Side Story?
It is. They're redoing that.
They are, that's true. So they have a street sale, and I was walking along. I hate shopping. I'm terrible at shopping. I don't like buying things. I feel pressure. I actually feel like Jesse Eisenberg right now. I'm getting all like neurotic, but I don't like to buy things. And I figure, when I used to do broadcast TV, I had to dress like in nice shirts and sometimes suits, and I never felt comfortable
Not
in
on
that.
the Beanduck channel.
On Mojo, I would wear, more T-shirts and stuff like that. And then on Beanduck, I'm like, I could wear cool T-shirts, but I have a very limited amount of T-shirts, and they're not that cool. And then I saw this, and it says, "Not programmed to, to tolerate your bullshit." And it's a robot heart.
We should get this show sponsored by a T-shirt company so that you can just rock a different T-shirt
That's
every
a great
time.
idea. But I want to say, because this is a Montreal artist. Her name, I forget her name, but the company, I think it's called No Gimmick, or that is her name. Hold on, what does it say on here? I'm gonna find it. I'll
Someone
find it.
named their child No Gimmick?
No, that's her name on Instagram. I'm just gonna look up No Gimmick because I think that's the name of the No Gimmick clothing. I want to give her a shout out because it's a super cool company. No Clothing Gimmick Online, is that what it's? No, damn it. All right, I'm gonna figure it out because she's pretty awesome. And
Take it off. Take it off.
But so I'm very proud and I'm very happy that someone noticed this shirt, and I'm gonna find out the name of the artist so you guys can order her stuff online.
Yeah.
Do you want to entertain them while I do that?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Well, you know what? I'll just talk about what I started saying before about the whole martial arts.
Oh, right, because I didn't know that you studied martial arts.
Yeah, well, for 7-8 years, I did a martial art called Kejikembo, which is a Hawaiian martial art. It is an acronym. It's an acronym? It's not really an acronym. It's a portmanteau. That's the word.
Portmanteau. Oh, that's
Karate, jiu-jitsu and judo.
So what's it called?
Kempo and boxing. Kejikembo.
Kejikembo. It's kind of like tofu.
Tofurkey.
Tofurkey?
Yes,
yeah.
It's
or
exactly.
Tofuducken, or
Yeah,
what is,
yeah.
okay,
Invented at the same time, same person. I've got two great ideas. And so, and my father taught Jeet Kune Do for 20 years or something like that. And so I definitely I grew up in the martial arts, I don't want to say community, it's not like I went into hangouts and stuff, but like with the mentality of it, and not only just watching Bruce Lee films, which I loved, but also just, my dad loves philosophy and the philosophy of martial arts, as well as, other things.
Flow, I guess, in that philosophy.
And so what's really interesting is that they touch on that in the film, and what I really like about the way they treated it, I didn't take offense to it at all. Not that I'm particularly defensive of martial arts, but is that there are some really good nuggets of information that they've taken out from martial arts and presented, but then immediately, almost self-deprecatingly, just counter it with some kind of absurd comment.
Can you give me an example? Don't want to put
I mean, yeah, no, I guess no. Actually, a really good example is in the trailer. You see him saying martial arts is a language. He says, "Ask me a question." He says, "What are you doing this weekend?" And he goes, "I am going to right?" But the part that the context around that he's saying is, he goes, martial arts is a language. When we learn to speak originally, you learn one word at a time. Mm-hmm. And then eventually you put it into a sentence, and then it becomes second nature. You don't think about what you're doing, you just speak, and it comes out as whatever. Yeah. And that's the same kind of mentality as martial arts, is that you train yourself to do these things, but then eventually you're no longer focusing on it, you're just reacting. Just like conversation is all reaction. Right? So just like language, martial arts is about reaction. But then martial arts always contextualizes within philosophy of the mind and all that, and about who we are as people. So, and how we can control ourselves and our emotions, or share our emotions. But then immediately after kind of like presenting that philosophical idea, Da, da. You know, like, so I thought that was hilarious, but I still appreciate the fact that they clearly are somewhat educated or put the effort into putting some of that philosophy in the movie.
Well, as Jesse pointed out, the people who made the movie are very experienced martial artists.
Yes.
And what you were just talking about, language, reminded me of something I read in a book. Alan Watts, who writes a lot about Zen, was talking about how language and language structure dictates how we see the world. And if you think about it, Western languages and Western culture, it's letter follows letter to make a word. Word follows word to make a sentence. Sentence follows sentence to make a paragraph, and on and on. It's all very linear. But in Eastern languages, it's often symbols, and it's not linear at all. And so you have a much more peripheral, the Eastern philosophy is a much more peripheral way of looking at things.
Because it's grounded in a peripheral language.
Exactly. And so,
wowza.
Mind blown. And I was right. It is no gimmick.
You found them?
I found it. It's no dot gimmick. I guess if you look it up online, GIMMIC. She's a digital embroidery artist, member of the Ossenvelt company, and you just go to nogimmick.com and you can find some of the clothes. And so, to Miss No Gimmick, who sold me on the shirt, hope you get some.
I think the hyper colors are what does it.
Yeah,
some hyper colors.
Oh, I was going to say, let's turn off the lights. It glows in the dark, but
goodbye.
Actually, we should try that just as on our way out. Should we do any kind of trivia? Do you want to do?
You know what? How about this? Why don't you give me 3?
Okay.
So that you can really see how bad I'm gonna be.
Fair enough.
When we actually.
There's also something I want to go over, by the way. Movie news. There were a bunch of awesome headlines. Just as I checked, Godzilla joins Instagram and Twitter for the first time. How awesome is that? I want to.
Full of spelling mistakes. It's just like. Melted my phone. Another Wednesday. Hashtag hump day. You know?
Anne Hathaway's Sesame Street movie moves to summer 2021. I didn't know that Anne Hathaway is doing a Sesame Street movie. That's
awesome.
Cool.
Well, Netflix bought Sesame Street, right?
Right.
Well, so Netflix. They're doing a Netflix original film.
Oh God, no! I haven't showed my
Steve
son.
Buscemi.
Oh God! Steve Buscemi is Ernie. Disney's live-action Little Mermaid eyes Harry Styles to play Eric.
Did you see the Mulan trailer?
No.
Yo.
And?
I mean, I'm excited for it, and I have not been excited for any of the Disney live-action movies.
Yeah, are you excited about Lion King?
Not at all. Probably the least. And The Lion King was my favorite Disney movie.
I just don't think.
There's no point.
No,
it's already animated.
But Mulan, you're excited
Mulan
about?
looks. I mean, from the limited trailer that you see, looks really cool.
Okay, and Thor 4 is happening. Taika Waititi is going to direct.
And is he going to be with the Guardians of the Galaxy?
I don't know. Let's see. Setting Ragnar. We don't know. We don't know. Let us know. Okay, here we go. Is there any Space Jam gets girls trick director Malcolm D. Lee? Yada yada.
There's a Space Jam remake.
There's a Space Jam. Space Jam 2. Yeah.
I'm just gonna take a second. I'm gonna take a moment right now to say. So there's no more original IP.
Yes, there is. The Art of Self-Defense.
That's, I think, why I appreciated that movie so much, because I realized in retrospect, I have not seen an original IP film in a long time.
Okay, I fell asleep a little bit during the latest Spider-Man. I'm sorry, I said it, okay? There, I said, did you see it, Ben? Did you love it? Loved it, okay. Because it's all the same. I want, again, Midsommar, and Art of Self-Defense. That's the kind of movies we need.
I might be watching The Babadook tonight.
Oh, have you never seen The Babadook? The Babadook.
Never seen it.
The Babadook.
Let's see. I don't know. I don't know if Jen's still in chat. Jen, are we watching The Babadook tonight?
You definitely
should.
Please say
no.
Okay. Here, we're gonna do one little session of. You want quotes or taglines?
But you missed the most important news piece.
What's that?
007.
Oh, right, exactly. Okay, so 007.
007.
So it's not James Bond who's going to be played by a woman, but it is.
Hard no.
It's 007.
That's awesome.
And what's her name again?
No Babadook tonight.
No Babadook tonight. Okay, there you go. What's her name?
I don't know.
I had it before. Lynch. Lynch is her last name. New 007.
Lynchy.
And it's not Jane Lynch. That would be a great 007, by the way.
Pretty sweet.
Jane Lynch is 007. No, it's Lashana Lynch. She's the next 007, but she's not James Bond. So I think that's pretty awesome. The Babadook will leave you Babashook.
Did you see what they talked about how they're going to be introducing the story?
No.
Is that Daniel Craig is still in it.
Right. But
Daniel Craig is retired, and he comes back to whatever the place is called and finds the new 007, which is her. I'm really excited to see it, and I think they've, from a marketing standpoint and from, I think I had this whole conversation yesterday with my father, but and I don't want to go too much into this. If you want to just ask me line trivia, and then I can make a fool of myself.
No. This is what we do on Depth of Field.
But 007 or James Bond is such an iconic masculine film series franchise, and it's so set in what it's supposed to be, and those things are sexy fast cars, sexy women, gadgets, coiffed hair. Daniel Craig already shook it up by his opening scene when he runs through the wall, and I'm like,
God, that's a great scene.
This is a great new James Bond. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to shift it to a new audience, because I remember you sending me that thing about all the ranks of franchises and how much money they've made, and 007 is nowhere near the top, and they've had like 40 movies.
Yeah, it's true.
It
might also be because it was MGM, and MGM, their heyday is way over, so they have to find new ways. Look, there was already controversy over, will it be Idris Elba, a black man playing James Bond? Yeah, try a black woman.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
And yet, and so they probably are aware that a lot of the long-term diehard fans are not going to appreciate this change, because, and so maybe this is their way of hand-holding them into a new generation.
Could be. So long as it's not taken, so long as it just doesn't get dumbed down or become.
I agree.
I just don't want it to be token. I want it to be like, I want it to be powerful. And I don't mean masculine powerful. I just want, I want to come out of there with that visceral feeling.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
And excited to see the next 007, which will hopefully be her alone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. Now let's do a
little. Now let's
do
do it.
Okay. Do you want a tagline or you want a quote?
Oh boy, I'm gonna suck regardless. Let's go with let's do a quote. Let's do some quotes.
Okay.
Oh God, I haven't seen any movie. And the funny thing is, the audience knows how little film I've seen.
Well, then I'm gonna go to the 2010s. Okay. All right.
That's when I stopped watching.
Here's a really easy one. Machete, don't text.
Machete.
There you go.
Yeah, I got it, guys.
Right.
I got it.
Okay.
I'm good at this.
Okay, good.
Machete, don't text. That's the
Machete, don't text. I love Machete, by the way. I fucking love Machete.
I've never seen it.
You've never seen it?
No.
Well, a little bit like Kung Fury, basically.
Okay. I'll watch it.
I'm glad he's single because I'm gonna climb that like a tree.
Glad he's single because I'm gonna climb that like a tree.
You want me to play?
Bridesmaid.
Yes, that's right.
Really?
Yeah, you're doing great. Melissa McCarthy.
I'm glad he's single because I'm gonna climb that like a tree.
There you go. All right.
That's a great line.
Okay. How about this?
Like a tree.
Ooh, so I'm sitting in Jerry's this morning having breakfast. A waitress comes over to me. She's waving a newspaper and she says, "You see what those Canadians pulled off? And we can't do something like that?" And I said to her, "You know what I said?" "No, what?" "Oh, I can't." "Argo, fuck yourself."
Oh!
Dude, I gave you the...
What?
The answer's in...
Is it?
Yeah. Argo.
Oh, I've never seen it.
Oh, okay.
It sounds a lot like something else I've... Oh, you know what? I think I saw that scene as a clip, but never actually saw the movie.
Could be.
Oh, there you go. So that's why I missed it.
How about
That's why I
this?
wasn't listening to what you were saying, and the answer was in... Yeah, okay.
Okay, last one. Not quite my tempo. Yeah. Not quite my tempo.
Whiplash.
There you go. One of the great movies.
And did you ever see the short film of it? Because it started off as a short film.
Yeah, exactly. I've never seen it.
And that's the scene that was the short film.
Is not my tempo.
Is his first appearance into the class, his first class with the teacher.
What inspired casting that is.
Wow.
Yeah.
He was terrifyingly perfect for that role.
Yeah.
Really like intimidating.
And so happy that he finally got his due, because he's been a character actor for the longest time that was always kind of, always in so many movies. But I guess the J. Jameson, what's the guy's name?
J. Jonah Jameson.
J. Jonah Jameson was a great role for him too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was a bit hokey.
That's true.
But man, that was a good movie, Whiplash.
So next week, we have an old friend of mine. Actually, you're going to be very excited about this. Stu Golfman. If any of you know Stu Golfman, he is literally one of the most idiosyncratic people I know.
Nice.
He's from Montreal. He moved to LA. I wonder if he could even tell the story of how he got there and how he stayed there and all this. So Emerald97 says, Jules did great today. He won a board game and did great at movie trivia.
2 for 2.
So Stu Golfman is a comedy agent, and we're going to talk comedy. He was also a judge on a show called The World's Best, which premiered after the Super Bowl this year on CBS, and they had a wall of judges from experts from different parts of the world, and he was a Canadian expert on comedy, and so we'll talk to him.
Oh, right, of course,
about being on a Mark Burnett-produced reality show. He was seated, but he was seated, I think, between Keisha Shante and Rashiki, the wrestler, and. But Stu also had some very interesting clients that he was representing for personal appearances, among them the late, great Adam West. So Stu probably has some great Adam West stories for us as well.
Nice.
So if you guys are into Batman, tune in next week, because we're going to talk Adam West, we're going to talk reality shows, and we're going to talk comedy. So that's going to be a very exciting episode. And I can't believe I get Stu. Like, you'll see, Stu is
excited.
Stu.
And I'll be there behind the computer.
There you go.
Running it all.
And we've got great shows lined up for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's hard to beat Eisenberg. I'm glad you guys tuned in for that. I'm glad you were here. Rikishi. Dashiki. I'm not going to tell that story.
You can just mix up the name however you want.
Julian, it was a pleasure to have you on as my guest, as my co-host, to walk us through the Eisenberg. Yeah.
What an honor. Thank you for trusting me and my opinion on things.
But we'll have you back to talk about LARPs and your favorite movies and all that kind of stuff. Here, quick.
Danzies.
Favorite movie of all time?
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction. Nice. Are you excited about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Sure.
I feel the same way as you. I'm a little bit hesitant.
I'm down.
Okay. Thank you guys for joining. Thanks for being there at the chat. Tune in Cosplay Cave tomorrow. Rosie's got, who's her guests?
We've got Checkmate Cosplay.
Yeah.
Oh no, I just made the ad. Oh, I hope they're not watching.
Just check on our site.
And a surprise second guest.
And I love cosplay now. Now that I've been to Comic-Con, I'm all cosplay. Oh, yeah? And Rosie did a great job on her panel. So
yeah, she was great. And we're going to be posting that panel up on YouTube soon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And is the panel up yet?
Oh, right. The Amber and Tristan. Is that on YouTube yet?
So
go to our YouTube channel to check out my interview with my panel discussion with Amber Goldfarb and Tristan D. Lala.
Love it.
That's it. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week for another edition of Depth of Field.